So that was a beating that Oregon put on Michigan State. And while the score says 31-10, I think that if you watch this game tonight, you know damn well it was never really that close. And that is for shame, because it felt like Michigan State got off to a really good start, getting the ball back off the kickoff, and then you see Aiden Charles make an Aiden Charles style play on 4th and 2, where he gets to find the most underrated true freshman in the 2024 class in Nick Marsh, because I'm thinking about Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith, Dylan Raiola, and now this dude, who in a normal year probably is the best freshman in the Big Ten, but because it's not a normal year, he's just the 3rd best. And yet, he did what he could to try to give them a shot, and I think that play was indicative of what he's capable of. He had 3 catches, 58 yards, but he was basically the best player for Michigan State all night, and Aiden Charles is showing you why he's still got some room to grow. I know that Michigan State fans were very excited about Aiden Charles coming over with Jonathan Smith from Oregon State, and I know that folks were saying that Aiden Charles probably should have been playing quarterback instead of DJ Uiagalelei at Oregon State, but A, his first-year starter, and B, is he better than DJ Uiagalelei is right now? Yeah, he is. But that's not saying much, and that's kind of the point, because he turned the ball over on the 1-yard line when he didn't have to do any more. He just had to sit there and either take the sack or throw the ball away. But he tried to do what I think you can do in high school, which is try to play hero ball, and Oregon's defense is just good. They stripped it, they took it away from them, and there goes 6 that you could have had. Could have had a score on the board. You could have been up 7-0. But as it stands, this Michigan State team reminds me a lot of Nebraska last year with the turnover challenges that they have. And this guy in particular, I mean, there's one thing to put the ball on the floor. It is another thing to throw not a single interception tonight, but just 10 of 17 for 154 yards, 58% completion. We're talking about a quarterback that really is growing up. And going on the road to Autzen is just tough. Like, if you didn't know it before, you know it now. Going into Autzen and expecting to get a win is a fool's errand. They have a higher winning percentage since 2019 than the University of Georgia, than the University of Clemson. It is a really tough environment to play. And then you got to see what the offense actually looks like when Dillon Gabriel is not actually out there dealing as he did in damn near every other game they played. He actually threw 2 interceptions in this game. It's the first time that he's thrown 2 interceptions in the same game since 2022. I mean, this is a man whose calling card is getting rid of the football quickly and making spectacularly good decisions with the ball. It doesn't really throw the ball to other people, and you don't really get an opportunity to get a pass rush on him because he's going to get the ball out of his hands in under 2.5 seconds, and in many cases, he's going to get the ball out in under 2. So how do you defend against a guy like him? Well, you do what Michigan State was able to do when they were able to do it well, which is you send more than one with the hopes that with 5, you send 5, right? Rarely do you send 6, but you send 5. You send one more than they can block, and you try to get to him. And there were a couple times where I felt like that was going to work for them, particularly when he's throwing these interceptions. But as the game went on, you got to see that Will Stein was like, okay, maybe Dillon doesn't quite have it at night. He's just 20 of 32 for 257, 2 TDs, and 2 INTs. Still a damn good stat line. But it was Jordan James who enjoyed the breakout. Like, he had his longest rushing play from scrimmage all year this year in this game. I mean, we're talking 44 yards he went for, 41 yards he went on 1 carry. He ends the night 24 rushes for 166 yards. That is what I expected from him from the jump, and he is rounding it in form right on time. Because the reason that we're talking about Michigan State and Oregon is the reason that we were talking about Ohio State and Michigan State, almost forgot state on that one. They're common opponents, and they're common opponents that they're going to play in back-to-back weeks. So it's a really good way for us to try to evaluate what an early look for Oregon State and Ohio State might look like based on Michigan State. And we'll talk more about Ohio State going to Oregon, which will be one of the marquee games of the year, on a day full of marquee games, October 12th, next Saturday. Because I think what I wanted to see is Oregon's offense really that good? And they're good. Is Oregon's defense really that good? It's really difficult to get a read on that because Aiden Charles is just so bad, and he's holding the ball for so long that there's only so much that offensive line could do to help him. But I doesn't take away from Oregon sacked him 5 times in this game and forced a turnover. I think going 2 of 11 on third down doesn't help anybody either, especially as Oregon 6 of 12 on third down, put up 477 yards of offense to 244 in total yards for Ohio State. But what did Ohio State actually do against Michigan State, right? About the same, honestly. Michigan State put up 244 against Oregon. They put up 246 against Ohio State. They were 2 of 11 on third down against Oregon tonight, and they were 2 of 9 on third down against Michigan State. Ohio State put up 486 yards. Oregon put up 477 yards. The difference here, I think, is, once again, who was able to play decently well at quarterback, Will Howard and Dillon Gabriel. And between Ohio State and Oregon, they sacked Michigan State a total of 9 times. 5 tonight for Oregon, and then 4 for Ohio State last Saturday. Michigan State turned the ball over 3 times. It's really hard to say that this is going to be indicative of what we're going to see, but I hope what it says is that Ohio State and Oregon are evenly matched. I think that Ohio State has more stars, but because Dillon Gabriel has been so good up until today with protecting the football, and because the run game had not really been what I expected it to be, I thought Oregon was showing a little less than I expected from them. And then they get off to a really rocky start for the year where you damn near got vandalized at a place where it's nearly impossible to beat Oregon. And then I watched Ashton Jeanty go for 192, but it turns out Ashton Jeanty is just that dude. So it's difficult to say that, they're good. And then UCLA is not any good. So the first real program that we're going to get to see Oregon play all year is Ohio State. And the first real program we're going to get to see Ohio State play all year is Oregon. I love this game because it is in Autzen. I think that if Ohio State can go on the road and get this W, there's a great argument for them to be the number 2 team in the country, if not the number 1 team in the country. I don't think that beating Georgia at home after having a 28-0 lead for Alabama is necessarily as impressive as perhaps Ohio State going into Oregon and knocking off an undefeated Oregon at a place where it has been almost impossible to beat them. We're also talking about a Dan Lanning squad that knows who it is. They're 19-0 against unranked opponents, and they were running the football so well, man. They had 103 rush yards in the first quarter. They allowed just 3 from Michigan State. They had Aiden Charles on the run. Past Nick Marsh, there was perhaps one other player that you really kind of sort of needed to worry about for Michigan State at wide receiver in Monterey Foster. But, Monterey Foster. I kept being mad at how Michigan State was so bad at executing. That's what happened. I kept thinking, okay, there's some good play calls here. If Aiden Childs grows up just a little bit, if you got a little bit more out of the run game, 30 rushes, 53 yards ain't going to get it done. Maybe it's a ball game, but it was basically 31-7. When they go up 24-0, the game's over as far as we're concerned because Oregon just sit on the ball, and there's no reason for them to risk anything. But as we get closer and closer to Ohio State versus Oregon, what I think this is going to turn into is who's tougher. Because if I think about Ryan Day and how toughness is at the top of his list, being able to run the football, being able to impose your will on people, that's also what I hear from Dan Lanning. He wants to be the kind of program that leans on people and watches them fold, watches them crumble. He is using, as Benetti put it, the sound system as psychological warfare, right? He wants you to believe that when you play at Autzen, you are unstoppable. Ohio State shows up and they can take that unstoppable away from you and they can give you the first loss of the season. We're going to think a little bit differently about Ohio State than we do already, right? If you're an Ohio State fan, you're fine with being the number 3 team in the country. Hell, you'd be fine with being the number 4 team in the country because we all like to fly a little bit under the radar. Nobody really likes to have that number 1 this early in the season. You want to have that number 1 when it comes time to seeding. But what you're building toward is this is a marker game for Oregon and Ohio State. The winner of that game will be seen as the Big Ten championship favorite. And if they win the Big Ten championship, the worst they're probably going to be ranked is number 2. They will be one of the 2 highest ranked conference champions by the end of the year. Book it. So think of this as not a play-in game for the college football playoff, but a play for seeding in the college football playoff because it is not hard to see how both Ohio State and Oregon make this year's college football playoff. It's just about where they're seated, and I've been very loud about this. I would rather be the number 5 seed than the number 1 seed. And I wish that you got to choose where you would like to be seated if you were the higher ranked seed. The reason I would like to be the 5 seed is I get a home game for my first playoff game. And I'm going to play the 12 seed, who's a team that I'm probably going to beat the hell out of, which is probably going to be the G5 champ. And then I get to play the 4 seed, which is the weakest of the ranked Power 4 champions, which means I'm looking at Iowa State, Texas Tech, Colorado right now, BYU. Tell me why I would want to be the number 1 seed at a neutral site, knowing that I'm going to get the 8-9 matchup, which is right now feels like it could be Penn State and Clemson. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I hope they get that sorted out and fixed because I'm going to hammer that one all year. However, I think what we can take from Michigan State is that they're not good. What we can take from Oregon and Ohio State is that they are, and we can't wait to see which one of them shows us who the better team is after October 12th.